Hi, good evening, everyone. This is Shashank Randev from 100x.vc. And today we'll be talking about finding the product market fit. It's been a very interesting year, as I spoke about last week during our 100x live session on how the playing field has been leveled. And this year saw a radical shift in the behavior of every consumer, from e-commerce to SaaS and multiple other sectors saw exponential growth, and while others saw tremendous decline. And every startup founder now is a little wary of the market. And in such a situation, how should the founders, the entrepreneurs, should go about validating their product, and how does the change in perception affect the startup ecosystem per se? And while all this is happening, how can you find a product market fit? And that's the core motto and the point of discussion today. I am joined by Mohan, Sundaram, CEO, Artilab Foundation, who's slightly stuck right now, so hopefully he can join us shortly. I've got Prasad Menon, CEO of Center for Incubation and Business Acceleration, and Gaurang Shetty, CEO of Research, Innovation, Incubation Design Labs, today with me. So I'll just bring them up onto the screen. Thank you, Prasad and Gaurang, for taking all the time and being here. Looking forward to this session. And while we wait for Mohan, and I'll kind of, wing it when he comes in and just kind of, rope him in. But the core discussion point is it's been an incredible year. I think none of our generation or our parent generation had encountered such a year, 2020. And with this came in massive learnings for entrepreneurs, but also massive learning for incubation centers, accelerators, funds, seasoned investors. This year literally gave deep insights in terms of how important it is to pull up our sleeves and just relook at the situation. And with that in mind, a lot of businesses have gone through realigning and pivoting their business models over the last year. So, but before we dive into all this, what does it actually mean to have a product market fit? So let me begin with Prasad right now.
So, yeah, thanks, Shashank, and fantastic work that 100x BC is doing. I've been reading some of your blogs, and I think I'll encourage all the viewers and startup entrepreneurs, aspirants, do follow the blogs, do see very, very pointed articles that Shashank and Sanjay are putting up. So I'll just start with that first. See, and I think we all, for the past 10 months or so, have been kind of from all directions. There are a lot of narratives around the new normal, and so it is something that everybody has gone through. So it's not as if that we are impacted differently than someone in Philippines or somebody in the US. So this is a global phenomena. So the baseline for everybody has shifted. So having said that, when you ask the question around product market fit, I'm a strong proponent of market first. I think the understanding of the market, and that would mean understanding of the customers. It starts with that, because the word fit, the only person who can say whether it is fit or not is the market. And who is the judge of that is indeed the customer and the consumer. So the ones who understand the customer and consumer, whether it is through the COVID times, what are their frustration, what are their pains, were able to find that product to fit. And for me, I think a lot of our incubators, early stage startups, one of the big challenges that they had was the assumptions that they made when they were preparing their product. So you prepared the product for a market, right, based on certain assumptions that this is what their problem is, this is what their most frustrated alternative solutions are, and here's my solution, which is giving a 10x value than what the alternatives are, right? But hey, if suddenly the customer says that's not my priority, this is my priority. So I'll give an example just to quickly wrap this up. We have a startup that works on employee mobility and employee safety. So there's a huge concern around employees' movement and the safety particularly when they're working around shifts and in remote areas, etc., right? Now, just imagine what happened with the pandemic, because then suddenly the customers, the big corporates who are concerned about that, wanted platforms that ensures compliance, ensures safety, etc. But now those corporates, the market per se, has got a totally different challenge. Now they're not talking about employee mobility as much as employee health and safety. So health became so that's what I mean when I say listening to the market.
Great initial pointers. Thanks for that, Prasad. Gaurang, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think product market fit, like for me, it comes at a little later stage. So initially, it's more about discovery, identifying the target customer, and then like if that product really meets the customer needs, because that is a very difficult journey. Like the initial first 6 months, 8 months, depending on the stage of the company, like whether it's a hardware. Depending on the like the vertical of the company, so if it's a biotech company or a software or a hardware startup. So I think product market fit comes like a little later. Initially, it's more of like customer discovery, and to reach that product market fit, there are like a lot of hardships or a lot of trials, experiments. You have to keep on like constantly testing and improving your product on the go. So most of our startups whom we were interacting with in the last 6 8 years, we like understood that it is not like you have to make the perfect product and then launch. You have to just deploy it, and then over a period of time your product will improve based on the feedback which you get from your customer, and eventually you will be in a spot wherein you think that you will think that okay, this is a good product market fit. Now we know like what the customer wants, how much time he's spending on my product or my application, what is the retention, what is the is he referring my product to others, am I getting good amount of revenue. Like so all these small points like add up, and then we come to a stage wherein we can proudly tell that okay, now we have found a product market fit. So I think the first step is to identify like the right customer and be very focused and niche, and then like I understand if that customer is really like needing your product, so that need should be understood clearly. So I think like this is what product market fit is according to me.
Got it. No, great. I think initial pointers, and I think Gaurang, you've already touched upon onto my second question is that how does one measure product, whether your product is a fit into the market, right? And you said it's a journey, and what would be interesting for the audience, which comprises of entrepreneurs, is how is CIBA and Riddle helping entrepreneurs right now in terms of finding the product market fit? How are you measuring it for them? How are you helping them connect to customers, and what's the methodology in terms of particularly so in 2020 and now at the beginning of 2021, uh,
Yeah.
what were the learnings over the last 1 year and what has happened? Prasad?
So, see, to be honest, it's not as if we have a particular methodology or a particular formula based on which can measure what is the product market fit. I think the best way to measure is how the customer gives a feedback, and it's like what Gaurang mentioned. It's an iterative process. So, every time the entrepreneurs try to nudge a little bit on the features on the product, basic core of the product, to address or react to customers customers requirement, then it keeps on happening. So all that I, at least as a mentor to some of these startups, as an incubator, we constantly say, you do rapid prototyping. You don't wait for the perfect solution. So you have to, people use the word MVP, and I love to borrow from somebody called the MLP, the minimum lovable product. At least make sure that something is out there that the customer is able to see that, okay, this meets my immediate need. May not be perfect, but it does it. The moment you get a validation from the customer and the customer uses it, that is a measure that the product at that moment in time, and again I use the word at that moment in time, it's a fit. If there is no validation at that point in time, if it's not used by the customer the way you had assumed it should be used, right? Then it's basically a binary. Either it's used or it's not used, right? That's kind of the measure. Of course, when you talk about later on, it's a very favorite thing. In any product life cycle journey, you have the early adopters who will ask for a different fit, and you have the early majority and who will be asking for a different fit, right? So I think if you understand the customer well, and if the customer has accepted your product and used the product, then it's a 1. Otherwise, it's a 0. For me, that's a simple approach.
Good point. Good point. Gaurang?
Yeah. So what we do is like we also don't have a fixed formula, but we try to understand 5 pointers. Like one is acquisition, one is activation, retention, referral, and revenue. So just in simple terms, I can tell one line about each things. Like for example, acquisition is like if customers are coming to your website or your mobile app or actually buying your product. Activation means how good experience do they have when they try your product for the first time. Like what is your first run experience. Then retention is like they're coming back again and again to the product. Referral means they're telling others about the product, and revenue means are they paying the justified cost or more than what other players are charging. So are they ready to pay immediately for your service or your product. So I think startups who are watching this can initially think about these 5 points, and then explore more pointers, more touch points from their customers to give better product or better service. But then initially, I think these 5 points would cover most of the teething problems which they are trying to solve. If they are able to crack these points, then I think most of their the kind of service or the product which they are providing would definitely improve.
So I think, and, would love to get your thoughts on the same, is what we saw last year. A lot of businesses, it, went down purely because of the fact that they were consumer facing businesses. There was a large element of them going out into the market, and all of them came to a standstill with COVID hitting us in March, and we going into a lockdown. And yet we saw businesses which emerged in terms of accelerating themselves. For instance, it was if it's a SaaS business, or if it's health tech initiatives. Within this piece, we saw businesses take smaller short-term routes and long-term routes. So, for instance, a healthcare platform company, as an example. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. So, uh, within this, we saw short-term goals and long-term goals. So, short-term, we saw a lot of folks coming out with PPE kits, as an example, right? While their core product is different, and suddenly they sidetracked and they said, there's a requirement for PPE kits or mask. Can I do that over and above what I'm trying to build out? Maybe a healthcare supplement. Is that a right approach in a crisis or an opportunity? Is it fair, or is it right for an entrepreneur to build out a second line of products or an SKU, or it's absolutely justified to keep surviving with the mindset that you need to come back to your core? So I love to get your thoughts. This is more from identifying one product market fit, and if it doesn't work, do you go for a short-term goal, and does that help you in your GTM and eventually fundraising and scaling up? Anyone, whoever wants
So,
to go first.
so I think this is definitely something which most of the startups have done, and we are very proud of it. Like in our incubator, also is a startup called GeoVio. So they provide telemedicine and different kinds of services for maternal care for pregnant women in the rural and tribal areas. But then during COVID, during the lockdown, they started manufacturing PPE kits, and that also gave them a lot of revenue in turn. But then they just did it because they wanted to give back to the community. So it eventually helped them get more revenues and build more on that front. But then their core business was not building PPE kits, and they recently won the Mashelkar Award too. So I think that speaks about their credibility and a lot of good work that they had done. So there are many such examples. We must be seeing from most of the incubators or various other companies are trying to do. Like I heard about one startup from ID Bombay, Suhani Mohan, from Tharel Designs. So they manufacture sanitary napkins, and I think Anand Mahindra tweeted about them and offered them support. So there are a lot of such good stories coming out, and I think that creates more value for the startup, because if eventually it is more about the community, right? Once you have a product out in the market, once you have your user base, it becomes a community. These people think that they belong to that particular company, or the company belongs to them. So I think eventually, if you are going to do something for the community will reciprocate, and that will increase your brand value, and that will help you get good karma points. So I think it's a win-win for everyone.
So you say that it's important to have this goodwill, irrespective of whatever
Yeah.
product category you are in, and whenever you can, you should take
Yeah.
that initiative. Prasad, your thoughts on the same?
Yes.
So, see, there are people who are real entrepreneurs who want to make don't want any opportunity to go waste. So definitely there are startups, who saw this opportunity of whether making PPE kits, and that's not just startups in our incubators. You see all the businesses around you, right? People who were selling stationery and water cooler, they suddenly started selling sanitizer and pumps, and right. So everybody wanted to jump onto the opportunity. Two reasons. One, it could be just purely because that was the only kind of business that they could think they can make money. So that is amazing. That was happened. A lot of people have converted their whatever business they had started making masks, this, but those are all short term. And I say for us with our incubators, I always say we can't make long term decisions based on short term statistics and short term prices, right? So what has happened, I think, for some of the startups where they could look at their core product and see how can we respond to this. I can give an example of Impact. Impactron is one of the startups that are incubated at CIBA, and they have this app which is like a health and kindness app, right? For every kilometer you walk, something is donated on behalf to a cause, and that basically you sweat community gains and corporate funds. So that was their model. Now with the COVID, everybody is now at home, so people don't go for walks, right? So they had to tweak their product to make sure that people do the fitness at home and still continue their contribution. Then they saw the breathometer. They added a feature called breathometer, so you can analyze how well are your lungs, right? How well are you breathing? These things were added on top as a response to the situation, but they never let go of what they were as a platform, what they're building. And they have about 1.5 million, about 15 lakh communities. So they are in a good place. So they need to ensure that that engagement continues. If they would say that, hey, nobody's walking out now, and now suddenly the engagement ratio is going to go down day by day, that would have been a crisis, right? So that is a perfect example of how we should respond to this.
So if I'm getting this correct, whatever helps you, so smaller pivots, whichever helps you achieve your larger objective, should always be at the back of your mind as an entrepreneur. Right?
Exactly.
Okay, great. But again, there is no right or wrong answer for 2020. I think it was survival of the fittest. From a VC perspective, I'll tend to be towards Prasad's point of view, because when a VC is coming in, when a seed stage fund is also coming in, the gestation period for the investment is slightly longer, and hence we are trying to think on a long-term basis. But is it fair to let go of short-term opportunities? No right or wrong answer yet, but I think historically speaking, long-terms have survived in terms of securing a funding and larger scale perspective. But good to hear. And finally, we've got Mohan, so I'm going to bring him. If you guys want to pull his leg, feel free, because he's late.
It's like an examination. You need to answer all the questions. We already know the answer.
Hi, Shashank.
Hi. Sorry, we missed you. We've covered a bit, but just to get started, we've discussed a few points around finding product market fit, and would love to get your thoughts around what it exactly means to have a product market fit in 2021. And just to get a sense of what's been happening at Artilab Foundation and the great work you guys have been doing over there.
Okay, so product market fits have not changed for some time, really speaking, and they have existed, but there have been uh, some processes for the product market fit that have changed with the COVID coming in and people going online. So demand for certain kinds of products have gone up, and the kind of channels that you would use to discover the product market fits have sort of changed, right? Traditionally, the product market fit goes by your interviewing or talking to end users and trying to figure out what their needs are, what is on the top of the stack, and then try and see, okay, which of these are we going to solve, and how effectively can we solve those, right? And in the process of finding the product market fit today has become virtual instead of physical. That's the first change that has taken place. So you need to be a lot more perceptive when you're doing it online as opposed to doing it in the physical form, right? That I think is a very important part. Even in the physical form, a lot of people make reasonable mistakes in getting to the product market fit. Okay. My experience has been not just in Artilab, but also I'm a mentor at IIM Bangalore for the last 11 years now, and I've mentored over 1,000 entrepreneurs. Now, the first thing that happens typically is my experience, 80% of people don't get the product market fit upfront. They have a solution and then they come and say, hey, where do I use this solution? So the way I tell them is you're like an answer searching for a question, right? Which actually leads to very bad fits and compromises. So I always follow the process of saying discover the need first, and then I'm saying technology does not matter. What you know does not matter in any form whatsoever. It is a pain point that you're resolving that actually matters in defining what you would do. And that should drive what technologies you will use, where you will slot your product, which customer segment will you choose, so on and so forth, to find the right product market fit, right?
Got it.
So in my own interaction, and I've been an entrepreneur for 25 years, so that the mentoring has led me to formalize a process, find the product market fit, and which is what I sort of educate them on, to saying that even if I don't know the market, even if I don't know the product, it does not matter. If you follow the process, it should work for any product, any market. Does that answer what
I think those are great pointers. I think moving on to the next question, and for our audience, very quickly, if you can, all of you, and starting with Mohan, if you can quickly help us understand what are the kind of startups Artilab Foundation has incubated, and what are the specific ones which have pivoted their model and really accelerated during 2020. So any few examples of a few startups over there.
Okay, so Artilab is a very special incubator. We're the first of its kind in the world, where we incubate assistive and rehabilitation technology-based products meant for the disability market. So we are focused purely on the disability market. There are 4 verticals that we follow. One is assistive technologies. The second is rehab technologies, which may be personal devices or maybe devices that the caregivers or the anybody else would use to deal with the patients. Okay, typically like patient hoists and all that would fall in that particular product range, that vertical. The third silo would be infrastructure solutions, where they are typically shared solutions or built into infrastructure to help people who would come to those specific locations to perform whatever activities they would want to do. Typically like alighting a bus or getting onto a train or entering a building, for example. They're all examples of good infrastructure solutions, transportation and all that. The fourth is a very unique vertical. We are also looking at solutions that can prevent disability.
Okay.
So why deal with disability when you, after it has come on to you, why not prevent it earlier? There are a lot of at least about 20 to 30% of disabilities are caused by conditions that can be controlled, like you lose your eyesight due to glaucoma, for example. You can contain glaucoma. How do you contain glaucoma? You have diabetes. So 1/3 of the leg amputations in the country is because of diabetes, gangrene setting in a diabetic patient. So if you can monitor the diabetic foot condition and make sure that you're able to take care of it well, then you won't enter the situation where you get into amputation. So that's the way we define this. So we have been looking at, we started in 2018, we have now incubated about 11 enterprises. So we have one incubator who builds prosthetic legs out of cane. It's been fairly well covered, very unique, and has taken part in a competition called Cybathlon in 2016 in Zurich. Okay. And then we have another one that's built a turntable-like solution for car seats so that people with disability can get in and out of cars very easily. Then we have one who has built a screening for hearing for children in a briefcase. So typically they have to go to the district hospital headquarters, go to an audiologist and get the hearing tests done. So for most of the people in villages, they can't go because they're all daily wage employees, so to say. They can't give away their daily wages and go on just for a screening test. So here we're looking at taking screening to the doorstep of people who would need it. So then we have about 3 teams working on bionic hands. We have some couple of others working on hands-free usage of mobiles and computers for people who don't have dexterity of their hands, fingers, so on and so forth. This is the range of startups that we're talking about. While in the commercial space, like the ones that I see in NSR cell of IIMB, we look at a runway of about 1.5 years or 2 years for companies to get into MVPs, products, test it out, and then be ready to scale. That's the time frame. In this marketplace, because there is largely hardware, the cycles for building solutions are far longer. So it typically takes about 4 to 5 years to get to a situation where there is validation.
True.
And then it's only then that they can look at any kind of scaling.
Right.
So we have about 3 or 4 that have products in market, while the rest are all in the product development stage right now.
Understood. And how have those 4 startups done over the last 1 year? Has some of them accelerated and have had an impact due to COVID, or largely have been unaffected?
They have been affected by COVID, actually. These are all physical products. They are not products that are rendered online or anything of that kind. So you have to, if you have to fit a leg, you must be face to face with that person and fit the leg.
Absolutely.
All products are like that. All our products are products that require human contact.
Correct.
So in the era of COVID, where human contact was completely shut off, they actually have been affected by it. So you can collect data, you can do everything, you can produce the device without human contact. But when you are getting that person to fit it for the person and using and training him, there is human contact.
Correct.
Right? So to that extent, it has been affected.
Got it. Okay. No, thanks for sharing those insights. Prasad, how has CIBA been working with the startups, and any specific ones which stand out, which have done exceptionally well or have been deeply impacted in a negative sense over the last 1 year?
Well, yeah, I think CIBA, we are, unlike Mohan, we are a lot more in services and software related, not so much into hardware. And so a lot of IT enabled, relying more on the machine learning and artificial intelligence and deep tech. And, all the startups, one way or the other. So I used to put them in red, orange, and green. Green are the startups that actually found a way to use this and speed up some of their features or product benefits. The red are the ones which suddenly came to a point where they're suddenly saying, oh, what do we do? So for example, we had one startup called Frotels. It's a woman-founded startup, which was hotel bookings by the hour, right? So hourly booking hotels, and she was doing extremely well, had presence in more than 100 cities, and signing up hotels, signing up corporates who send their field salespeople for a day or half a day in different cities, and she was doing extremely well. And then suddenly this stuck, and then you are sitting there wondering, what do we do, right? So those are the ones which are kind of almost frozen, and then now relooking at it, how can I do it differently? What are the other models? Even when if the economy starts recovering, it won't be to that extent. Safety becomes important. How are the hotels? And she used this opportunity to get as many hotels registered as possible, because most of the hotels would want now to be on the platform. Some of the big players who would have otherwise said no to her now are open to it, because they want every bit of let's say customer acquisition as possible. So that's the part that worked well. So let's say that was a crisis that was converted into some kind of an opportunity. But others, we have a startup working that's co-incubated with CIBA and Sign IIT Mumbai, was into baggage AI, so using artificial intelligence for in the baggage verification in the airports, security checks. Now, what they did is, because they are into imaging and X-ray technology, they've also now started working vigorously on the counterfeit AI, because a lot of the e-commerce companies are doing extremely well. They're shipping smartphones left, right, and center. And one of the biggest challenges they have is the cost of return logistics. So if you are able to identify the counterfeit right at the time of shipment, that would save them tremendous amount of cost. So now they have developed the product, and they are piloting it with some of the biggest e-commerce companies over here. So those are the kind of examples that I can share about CIBA.
No, great. And while 100x works with a lot of incubators, and we have been investing in SaaS and tech-enabled companies, but we've also invested in hardware companies. And it's amazing the kind of work which goes behind hardware startups as well, and hence commendable efforts put in by Mohan and Gaurang. And Gaurang, coming to you, I also believe that you've been working with hardware as well, and
Yes.
because India is a country where VCs, and I'm possibly axing my own feet, but investors tend to typically stay away from hardware startups, but would like to get your thoughts in terms of how some of these businesses were impacted in good and bad way, and possibly affected their funding cycle.
Sure. So basically, in Riddle, we have over 119 startups till date. We have incubated them, and like recently, we also have a lot of startups who have applied and who we have incubated in the biotech space. So one interesting startup is called Evo Foods, and they create plant-based substitutes for meat products, for animal products. So in the lockdown, especially, there were a lot of things which happened. So I don't know if you have seen this Netflix series of Queen's Gambit. It's a chess-based series. So after that series,
It's on my to watch list right now, still pending.
Okay. So after that series, one of our startups square off. So their scale skyrocketed, and they have crossed over $5 million in revenue. So a lot of good things also happened. Like for example, Govio, I just mentioned about them. They were in the healthcare space for maternal health. So they work with rural and tribal pregnant women, because they had done extensive research, and then they built the product. So they found out that these women do not get access to government. There are a lot of facilities provided by the government that they never reach to these tribal villages. So they created a particular system, created hardware and software for the health workers there, and they trying to provide access and care to them. So they also pivoted to build those PPE kits, and they have won several recognitions, awards for their product. And apart from that, then we have Indra Water. So we have jointly incubated them with Sign IIT Bombay. So they also are doing pretty good. So they replace the large footprint required by a traditional STP plant, the sewage treatment plant. and they have made a small compact refrigerator-like unit which actually replaces the entire STP. So they also actually won the World Water Week in Stockholm. So I think like a lot of startups have like done a lot of these kind of innovations, and during lockdown they were actually able to discover that they will be able to do much more and be more productive by operating in a lean way, because during lockdown like they weren't able to do physical meetings, they weren't able to meet their customers in on the field, they weren't able to go to trade shows and all these things which they usually do. So for hardware startups, it was like a bit tricky because they weren't also able to meet their manufacturers because most of the production lines, unit, everything was stopped. So they had to like restructure their entire thought process, plan on how to go about like setting up everything again once the lockdown goes away. So a lot of hardships also were there, but then many of them have like bounced back. Like for example, one of our startups called Health Cheetos. So they are into snack manufacturing. They manufacture beans based nachos. So their products is based out of like bean based, like for example, right now their product is nachos, which is made up completely of beans and various other ingredients. So unlike the traditional like nachos which are available out in the market, so during lockdown their manufacturing got delayed, and they were delayed, the entire cycle was delayed by 6 months. So now they just bounced back since December. They have picked up, and I think they are on track to do 3,000 packets per month again. So I think it's a good learning experience for them. So in future, if there are certain events like this, so they will be well versed of what exactly to do. So I think it was a good reality check for us and them both.
So that's a very interesting point you brought out, Gaurang. And I have a question along the same lines. Is that uh, if a startup is incubated in either of the incubation centers, collaboration is one aspect of finding a product market fit. You mentioned a partnership with Sign. Help us understand collaborative initiatives for these founders who are wanting to be part of the incubation centers. Is it just about getting a space to work in, or get access to your labs for building out hardware equipment? And this is for both Mohan and Gaurang. But or is it above, beyond that, in terms of collaborations with other bodies? Could be incubation center, could be
Yeah.
government bodies, and how is that happening at each of your incubators? And then after this set of question, I think I'll bring it to an end with one final question, and then we can move on. But yeah, Gaurang, you can begin, and then we can move to
So
Prasad and Mohan.
yeah, so I think each incubator has its own strength. Like for example, some of our startups, we recommend them to go to IIT Madras for their customer discovery program. So I think 4 startups have been shortlisted, and now in this batch also we have one of our startups, and I'm also a part of that program. So they have a very good customer discovery program. So I think that's why we want our startups to go there. So I think a lot of incubators around like our or in our connects or around us, like for example we have Sign, CIBA. So we usually evaluate the startup and then decide like what would be best for the startup, and not like every time like what would be best for us. So if we think that they would get more value from say a Sign or say IIT Madras or CIBA, so we would definitely send them. And so that is what we do. So internally also we have like a small team, and based on our capability, our resources, we discuss with the startup like would he be comfortable doing that, or he can he can also be like free to inform us that he thinks that he will be incubated only in Sign, he does not want to opt with Riddle because he thinks that he'll get everything there. So we are okay with that also. So we have a very open discussion and transparent and fast process, so that we don't end up in a like a relationship wherein we are not giving our 100%, and the startup also is not comfortable sharing equity or whatever, sharing rental amount. So we are very transparent from day one. So that helps us remove a lot of teething issues. Like we give them access to our space, and we are also able to leverage resources from other accelerators or incubators.
Got it. Prasad, your thoughts?
I think, see, the only stakeholder that we represent is a startup. So whatever the startup needs, and that is, it starts with that. And as they say, it takes a village to raise a child. It can never be that you can you can take care of it, right? So you need all these multiple collaborations. So I'm sure Gaurang agrees that we are never possessive about there is nothing called that, it's our startup. So whatever the startup needs, if we are not able to do it, if we see that they are not in the right stage, if we see that someone else is a better fit, even though the startup sometimes insists that they want to be part of the incubation for the wrong reasons, right? Because fancy office infrastructure you can have anywhere. That should not be the reason why you select an incubator. So that's the kind of maturity that we have to bring in, and the collaborations come in that way, right? So we definitely work closely, and we keep on. So I have a agri-tech startup, right? Somebody who's primarily in agriculture and has created a fantastic agri-sorter and agro-grade machine using artificial intelligence to sort vegetables, sort and grade vegetables and fruits and all that. Now, his journey from day one has started with CIBA, but now he's reached a stage where another incubator or accelerator may be able to help him more. So he went to ask somebody else, and then they're calling me and asking my permission. I said, yeah, this is not a bonded contract, right? Whatever is good for the startup. And that's how it was. So there are, of course, like Shashank, you're part of one of our products. So the moment we know that the startup is at the right stage and for the right VCs, that we should introduce them, because we also don't want our startups to go through that entire process of funds and get distracted. So we know partners like you, so we direct them the right startup at the right moment, start applying for like 100x VC. So yeah, those kind of it's like I said, it's all what the startup needs, right? From wherever they get it.
Fair point. Mohan, your thoughts on the same?
Okay, so collaboration is the most important aspect when you get to incubation, because no one person can do it all. So that's the first thing. And it is over a period of time, like how companies work in a market space, even incubators are specialized. So we are a specialized disability-focused incubator. So we went about building our partnerships with people where we thought they could harness our strengths and we could harness their strengths. Okay. So, for example, we have an understanding with Social Alpha. We signed a collaboration agreement with Social Alpha. So, Social Alpha is it's good to have them as a partner because they are also in the social space, but they're spread out.
Correct.
But we are focused on one vertical, the social space, which is disability. And we have built up, for example, we have a top-of-the-line prototyping lab and an industrial designer on our rolls. Nobody else has that kind of a infrastructure. But that is needed for disability. When you build physical products, you need that. We have an electronics lab which can manufacture surface mount boards, maybe 1,000 of them in a week. And we have a mechanical lab where we can do all kinds of machine operations that you want to do. Okay. Now, this is investment that almost nobody else can make. Now, it doesn't make sense for us to just keep it to ourselves. So the first thing that we did was saying, hey, anybody else wants to use these machine resources, please come over. That's the first kind of thing that we said. The second is that I come from the disability space, right? And I am from the social sector, apart from being a technocrat. And I also am the president of a large NGO network, a federation of NGOs. So I have access to NGOs, which is very difficult for any startup in this space. When you get into disability, NGOs are the NGO groups are large stakeholder groups to reach your customer, their channels.
Absolutely right.
Right. Plus, they also help you do clinical testing or user testing and so on and so forth. So what happens, say, for example, with Social Alpha, they say, hey, if we get somebody from disability and they're in early stages, then we would rather send them to you because they have a fund which can fund these people. We don't have a fund, right? So we sort of dovetail into each other. There are overlaps, but we sort of dovetail into each other where they would be more appropriate for a later stage of the startup, and we would be appropriate for the earlier stage where we're doing the initial prototype to product kind of transformation. We have the same relationship with Wilgrow.
Correct.
Okay. And we also have a relationship with IIM Bangalore, where what we're doing is they have a 3-month launchpad program where startups will come and spend 3 months there. They end up getting some academic classes on various things that the startups need to do. Plus, they need to pitch on a regular basis to the others as to what they're doing. So it helps them refine their story. People give them a lot of ideas. So the best learning platform for startups, I believe, in an incubator is when you can talk to other startups and you exchange ideas. That provide, and if it's outside your space, then you can borrow ideas from other spaces. So we are a disability focused incubator, but IMB is a general incubator. So if you go there, you will meet people working on all other projects, and you will get some nice ideas from them, right? So that's the kind of a relationship that we have with IIM Bangalore. And with everybody else, what we say around the country is that you may be successful in sourcing a startup, but if you look at disability, most of it cannot really support a disability-based startup.
Yes.
We are there. Let's collaborate. Let's co-incubate. So we have this thing called co-incubation that we call. We're saying let both of us add value to the startup, right? We may have overlaps. It doesn't matter, right? There's nothing like this is mine and this is yours and all that. So what we do upfront is when we get into co-incubation, we also get into an equitable sharing of equity. We do it upfront and say, hey, this is the kind of equity we would want, this kind of equity we would want, let's share this, so that there is no kind of thinking at a later point in time, is it disproportionate or whatever, right?
Correct.
Now, we really don't know what's going to happen to the startup at a later stage. Nobody can project what will happen, how much value each one will add, so on and so forth. We'll be lost in trying to resolve that and lose time for no reason whatsoever. So the model we follow is, irrespective of who adds or how much, if we're co-incubating, let's share equally. Let us share the spoils. It's a very simple model, and we can get going. And that has worked well for us.
Great, great, and thanks for sharing those insights, Mohan. And unfortunately, we are out of time. I would have loved to continue the discussion, but since we are out of time, final thoughts for the audience, starting with Mohan, Prasad, and then Gaurang, in terms of your tips, your suggestions, and your feedback to founders on the outlook of 2021.
Okay. So my point that I started when I said in the early stages also of this particular discussion is spend as much time as possible, even before you conceive the product, in identifying the pain point that you want to resolve. Okay. If you identify a pain point that you want to resolve, there are ways and means to discover the size of the problem. Today you have 24 hours in a day with you. If you go after a small problem or a big problem, your returns will be commensurate to the size of the problem that you attacked. And return on time is higher when you go for a bigger problem. Return on time is lower if you go for a smaller problem size. So discover a big problem which has reasonable chances of you, say in 5 years' time, becoming an IPOable venture, if you, let us say, get 5% market share. So that's how you would choose good ideas, right? Choose a good idea with a large market space for which you have the wherewithal to build products. Discover the pain point and discover that the pain point that you want to serve well before you start anything else, and that will go a long way in deciding how successful you are.
Got it. Thank you, Mohan, for that. Prasad?
So if I have to talk about 2021, I would say, first of all, let's not, people talk about this post-COVID world, new or normal and all of that. I would say not post-COVID, beyond COVID. I think we have to keep it away, because since we are not building something just for this particular phase. So if you are working on some pain point, like Mohan was suggesting, you're trying to resolve a definite need in the market, just look at it beyond COVID and focus on it. Use this opportunity to develop your product And finally, work from home is overrated. You need the energy of the entrepreneurs. Everybody needs to collaborate with each other. Sitting behind the computer in small one-room kitchen apartments in Mumbai, that's what most of the startup people are able to afford. Does not give them creativity. It will not come out of that. So I think you need to start. You don't need to go into an incubation space or a co-working space, but you need to meet up. You need to come together at least once a week, brainstorm, meet with other startups, like Mohan was saying. I think that's very, very important. And if you do all of that, and you'll sail for 2021 and probably come up with products at a faster pace than you would have done in 2019, not even 2020.
Thanks, Prasad. Gaurang?
Yeah, so I think like for me personally, what I do is like if I find an opportunity or a problem, I start building a small solution and I try to test it out. So that's how I started Riddle. So I would recommend, like most of the startups which I have seen personally, have like they did not do a lot of research to keep like identifying or searching problems, so big or small. So they just started with some problem which was annoying them, and that's how they created a company out of it. So I think like just if there are small young entrepreneurs or small companies or startups who are watching this video, I would recommend you to start building solutions for whatever problem you think is annoying you, and or an opportunity you think is good enough for you to solve. I think you should just go ahead and do it as soon as possible, because that will be your learning curve. So that will help you build better products in the next iteration. Whenever you discover another big problem, you will like know all the mistakes you have done in the previous product, and then you can quickly build another solution. Because a lot of students, like in the last 3-4 years, we had seen a lot of students with no technical background coming and telling we want to build a tech product, and then we used to tell them, okay, learn how to code, and then we'll help you, we'll assist you with that, and then start building with us. So I think building things by yourself or getting people along with you who can build with you quickly, so that is the key. Yeah.
Great. This was a fantastic session. Thank you so much, Mohan, Prasad, and Gaurang, for sharing your insights. And to the audience, startups watching the live session, feel free to reach out to all three of them if you're looking for incubation centers in your respective fields. And at 100x, we've just recently opened application for Class 04 investments, which we'll be closing by March. So feel free to reach out to us at pitch@100x.vc. Once again, Mohan, Prasad, Gaurang, thank you so much for your time, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in person over a cup of tea or coffee very soon. I'm already having a cup of tea. It's very cold in Delhi right now, but really looking forward to in-person meetings now, and wishing you all a very happy New Year and a 2021, a prosperous 2021. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
Shashank.
you. Thank you. It was nice interacting with you all.
Thanks.
Okay.
Have a nice time.